we always start, or we're about to stop and nurture ourselves and think of ourselves. There you go, Mrs. Fishman. I already noticed you are ready. You have your second box ready. For Shlema, for Paralea, Basar Esther, in full health, complete health, restored health, and miraculously just, it's for the Abishter, it's no effort to do. So we have to ask the Abishter to do his part. We're doing our part. We're gathering. We're bringing brachas down, and shortly we're going to actually talk about how powerful this transformation of this time we're spending together is in a real way. Hi, Tsepa, it's nice to see you. Joycey, nice to see everyone. Okay, so jumping right in, because there is so much to cover, and I always feel like by time our time is over, it's like, what? Wait, it's over already? There's so much more. There's so much more. That's always how I feel. So what we're going to try to do is, hold on a second, I'm just trying. There we go. Okay. So we're going to start off, first of all, what I really want to do, because I feel like the past two classes were so big and so such tremendous concepts and ideas. And I think like the refresher for those ideas are constant. They're things that we need to dig into our toolbox literally on the daily. Like we're not even just like, okay, maybe an event will happen in my life and I'll have to dig into that idea. I feel like these are like the daily, like, you know, just like you got to eat every day, you need to sleep every day. Eventually you have to do laundry probably every day if you have a full house. We need these tools every day. And so I want to do a very quick recap of like 8 main concepts we covered so far just in the past 2 classes. I'm not doing a recap from the beginning, maybe we'll do that at the end, but we'll start with that. So first of all, I guess the main idea is that we talked about the necessity for joy and why joy is such an essential ingredient in life. Because without joy, how can we be transformed? How can we transform ourselves to be the best version of ourselves, right? How can I refine myself when I'm feeling lethargic or down, or, you know, lack of energy, or lack of like joy for like taking on life? Because, you know, life is not simple, right? I don't think anyone here thinks it is simple, right? And then we shifted on to discuss. So first it was like this, the author was establishing there's a necessity for joy, and using that wrestling analogy. And then we moved on and we discussed that life's challenges can truly leave us feeling completely depleted, completely hopeless. And I think many of us can relate to moments where we just felt like, I don't know, there's no hope. How am I going to get past this stumbling block or this challenge or this obstacle? It's so big or daunting. And I feel like a lot of us can relate to that on many stages, even if it's on a silly stage where you have a kid who just is biting or hitting or not sleeping, like on a very little age, or a teenager, you're like, Hashem Yishmar, can I get through, you know, raising this kid with sanity? So I think we can all absolutely relate to that on a very real level. But then the Alter shifts and says, wait, that feeling of hopelessness can actually be transformed with shifting and understanding that number one, everything Hashem does is for the good. And the funny thing is, many sages, many tzaddikim, Talmud, Gemara, there's many people who are known to say everything Hashem does is good, right? For the good. The stories in the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Nachum Gamzu. It wasn't a new concept. But what was fascinating that the Alter draws on to kind of give us, okay, that's a great idea to believe in, but how? And the Alter gives us the Chassidus to understand that through the Seder Hishtalshelus, how things come from the Eibishter, which is all good, to this world, which is limited and we can't see the behind the curtains or the big perspective. So how the way things come into the world, there's revealed good and concealed good. And that's something that, okay, that's why, you know, Rabbi Akiva or Nachum Gamzu were able to understand that everything is for the good. They knew that, but we, until the Alter Rebbe, until the Tanya, we didn't understand that. You and I, the regular folk who are dealing with this not good stuff in life, we didn't have the language or the knowledge or the philosophical idea. Even if it's hard to pull on that idea, like we talked about many times in difficult situations, we didn't even know that that was a thing. So that's one of the gifts. And we said that ultimately that we do believe everything Hashem does is good and revealed good and concealed good. And we said that's why the Rebbe said Taiv Hanir of Enigla again and again and again. You should see revealed good, that it's visible, it's understandable in our language, right? It's great that the Abishur is doing everything good, but like I'm a little selfish. I want to understand the good. My language, thank you. I'm living life, you know? So And we can still ask the Abishter for Taiven or Venigla. We want revealed good that is in our, I don't want to have Google Translate to explain how it's good. Like, just give it to me in the good, the right way. And then we shifted on to discuss other things that could prevent us from serving Hashem with joy and gladness of heart. And we started with guilt. And we said, okay, there's a place for guilt. Guilt is not a horrific emotion or emotional reality or some place that we go into. The question is, what do we do with it? If it's, running the show, then it's toxic. If guilt is consuming and all my decisions are made up based on guilt, then I can't make proper decisions. And I want to tell you, I remember, and I didn't say this then, but it struck me. This is such a clear example. I was speaking once to a shlucha whose kids live in a city like my kids with no schools and no friends and college campus. And, they're the only one with the yarmulke, the only one with the tzitzis, the only one under 18, whatever. It's not simple. Anyone who says it's simple, it's not. I don't think my kids are worse for the wear. I think they'll be okay. I trust in the Abishter and Tehillim, and God willing, then we'll be okay, right? And I remember she called me and she was saying she really feels guilty. She's filled with such tremendous guilt. She feels so bad for her children. Look, they don't have a school. She had a school. And I said, well, 1 second. Every neshama ends up where it's meant to be. So every neshama in the entire world, we believe that Chassidus, right? Neshama is tied to the location, but your children can't be. It's not possible. And I said, and the second thing that we have to remember, because this is when we could pull on those big philosophical ideas and draw them into our lives. And then I said, the second thing you have to remember is if your launching point or the point of departure for your parenting is guilt, you're not going to be able to make balanced decisions. It's going to be clouded. It's going to be, you're going to overcompensate, undercompensate. Yes, acknowledge the reality of what they're going through, validate their feelings, find creative solutions, but guilt is for sure, it's just a negative lens to see things through. You don't want your husband engaging in a relationship with that, your relationship with you, based on guilt. Like he feels guilty, so he's going to celebrate an anniversary. Okay, I feel so guilty. I'm going to buy you flowers for Shabbos. The flowers are nice, but that's not a reason, right? You don't either want to do things to someone just because you feel guilty. It's yucky. So we understand the toxicity of that. Yehudit, I saw your question. It's a great question. We're actually going to get to it at the end of this class. So if I don't summarize it, please jump in at the end and ask it because it's a great one. So then we talked about guilt, and the author gave us a very concrete solution for guilt. You feel guilty about something you're failing at. You feel guilty where you're not measuring up. You feel guilty on an avera that you just can't control. Even a temptation you have that is not matching, it's not matching for you. It doesn't match you. Carve out time, carve out space, introspection, cheshbon hanefesh. Give it time, give it space, and come up with a concrete, tangible plan on how you're going to improve. And that's in essence what I was trying to tell that mother. Doesn't mean you don't sit with your husband and say, okay, this child is struggling with this because of that, because of where we live. And this child needs more friends. And this one needs more socialization. That's constructive. There's a real issue here. What we're going to do about it? Okay, we're going to send them to winter camp. Okay, we're going to send them to overnight camp. Okay, we're going to fly a friend in for a week. Once you're looking at it not from that place of just toxic, heavy guilt, then you start finding solutions. And this is, by the way, again, across the board in every relationship. And this is one of the reasons why Tanya to me is like so, it's invigorating because it's so applicable to everyday life. Like what the real stuff we're dealing with as wives and mothers and sisters and friends, right? This is real live issues that we have. Alter was talking to human beings, it wasn't for tzaddikim. So the Alter made that clear, right? Okay, now we figured out guilt. All done, ladies, we solved guilt, no problem. Alter gave us a tool. Should never feel guilty again. L'chaim, success, right? You're laughing because halavai, right? Now we got to do the work. We have a great plan. Now we have to do the work. Then we're moving on. And the next step the Alter discusses shame. And the Alter says, shame, there's no space for. There's no space for, there's no place for. At the end of the day, it is futile. It leaves us depressed. It leaves us downtrodden. It leaves us like, we can't function. It doesn't help. And the struggle, when you feel shame, will only lead to engaging in the negative behavior again. It's this negative cycle. it's just not going to help. What does Alter say? That what do we need to do? Look at where you're failing or coming short as an opportunity for growth. This is where I need to grow. And I remember once years ago, I had the incredible honor, privilege, I would say, when I worked in a preschool in New Jersey. I helped start a preschool in New Jersey. And when I did, we worked with this educational coach. She was a top educational coach. She's still doing incredible work. She works for the state of Israel. Really brilliant Dr. Namo Zoran. And I remember when she would come into the classroom, she watched different children's behavior. And I remember, the kid in the preschool classroom was like, I taught 18 months to 2.5. Love that age, but they know how to challenge, right? And she would say the child, when you look at the kid who's, shouting the loudest, biting, hitting, throwing, whatever, the most destructive, is waving a sign saying, this is where I need help. I am not regulated. I don't feel comfortable. There's a lack of balance. Ladies, think of when, I'm not saying any of you, but if you have ever met someone who's lost their cool and had an adult tantrum, right? They may not be biting or hitting, literally, but there's many ways as women we can bite, right? We can, the sharp words, yelling, losing cool. It's also, we don't feel equilibrium. We don't feel balance. We don't feel, and it's really, that's where we can grow if we take time to look at it. And so focusing on just feeling shame, I'm so ashamed that I lost my cool. No. I lost my cool because I didn't give myself enough time to sleep. I lost my cool because I didn't have enough help. I lost my cool because I didn't plan enough in advance. If we start looking at it in a healthy, analytical way, then we can grow. Then that's amazing fuel for growth. So it actually changed my perspective of how I see when a child's acting up. Because really the child's acting up, it's a chesed to us as parents or teachers or educators, because they're really saying, help, I need you. And once we meet them where their need is, which, we need to decode sometimes with a child educational therapist, with a teacher, with a mashpia, we with a kapitel tehillim, we need help, right? But once we can see the acting out differently, like when we act out. I mean, again, I don't know if any of you have. It's once or twice in the 22 years of marriage, 21 years of parenting, once or twice it's happened, okay? Confession time here. So once we do, we could see this as an opportunity to maximize our potential, to grow, because the more we grow as human beings, the more we could serve Hashem, the more we could fulfill why we're here. Then the Alter Rebbe goes on and says, okay, all these things are great, but how do we do this? The Alter Rebbe says, well, let's shift. Let's understand that at the end of the day, if we see ourselves as manya, this body, and I happen to have a neshama, it's not going to work. The manya neshama is just like there. But if I say I'm a neshama that happens to have manya's body, now how do I use manya's body to fuel and serve the neshama? And so when we shift that, then we do feel joy when we're struggling to overcome something, and we do. Because then, wow, triumph. My neshama is shining. And so the other thing that Rebbe mentioned is, if we said, is that when we're specifically struggling, stop and remember your neshama that came into the world is here to struggle and here to fulfill a mitzvah. You're fulfilling a mitzvah. At that moment, it's a whole separate mitzvah. That's a different way to look at the struggle. That's a whole new perspective, that at that moment I am serving Hashem. And then, of course, the natural segue or progression is, if I can see myself that way as a soul that happens to have a body, well then, my friend, mother-in-law, neighbor, sister, coworker, boss, go with someone who maybe, gives you a challenge. They're also a neshama that happens to have a guf. And they're more like me than not, because we're achim mamish. We're literally brothers, we're sisters, we're family from the same source. That's deep work. And I said this last time, but I told everyone that you always used to tell us, treat your siblings like complete strangers. Don't treat them like siblings. Treat them like strangers. Like some of you meet down the street, you'll always be, just be nice. You don't just yell at someone down the street. Don't just yell at your sibling. And so I think it's really, the Alter was saying, the way we can look at everyone through that lens, their prism. Again, all of these are easy to say. Not one of these are easy to do or live. But again, that's why we have the toolbox, right? The toolbox is there to help us, so we can tap into and we can pull those tools out as we navigate different phases and stages and struggles in life. Okay. The next one, last two main ideas, and I think it's very important to do this recap every few times in a long course, because otherwise it's who remembers what we talked about 3 classes ago, right? It's hard to like, so it gives us this refresher, and I don't, as I was writing down these refresher points, all of them were like, oh, I needed to hear that today, right? Like, this is a good refresher for me. The next thing that we talked about is that ultimately, if I see myself as a neshama that happens to have a guf, then really doing mitzvahs is how I feed, nourish, express that neshama. How I take care. So you talk about self-care, the neshama also needs self-care. How do we do that? Through mitzvahs. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm here. That's why my neshama is here. And that we're going to go into a lot more today, because we'll see how that segues into the next big concept. And the Alter Rebbe goes on and kind of concludes that section, is that when I see this, then I'm going to be full with a certain level of joy and understanding that I have a privilege to be a partner with Hashem, to make Hashem feel comfortable, to be Hashem's host in this world, right? You have a guest, you take care of them, you make their stay in Houston, warm and healthy and wonderful. They leave, you feel good. You hosted them, you made them feel at home, maybe they were in town for something that's difficult, maybe something that's a simcha, and your hosting enhances that person's reality. We can enhance the Eibishter's reality every single day in this world. And that's why Hashem's here. That's what the world's here. That's why Hashem wanted the world. It's for you and I, sorry. Hashem's probably here because right? So the famous story, where is Hashem? I told you last time, right inside, right? Or I think the Kutzker used to say, wherever you let him in. The Eibishter's everywhere. It's wherever you let him in. So that's where we're at so far. But the next section, which we're going to deal with today, and it's so fascinating to watch also, that once you start looking at Tanya as this buildup, it kind of flows and makes sense. I think sometimes when we're just, saying chitas from lessons in Tanya, where there's maybe a translation that's not speaking to me or written in a language that I can understand, though I think Baruch Hashem, there's so many resources in Tanya nowadays to decode and break it down, and I think there's no shortage of opportunities for us to do so. But I think sometimes when we're just doing day by day, and again, I'm not anti-chitas, let's put that out there, okay? But when we're doing day by day, it's hard to see that overview of like that big picture image, the forest from the trees, right? So here, this drone's eye view is giving us this almost like, okay, that makes sense, right? And it kind of puts it together in a place that it can really resonate with us in a very deep way. So moving onward, the Alter Rebbe is now going to say, okay, all these are wonderful. This is wonderful. Do we have any problems? Does the Beit Din have any issues now? The Beit Din still has issues. Because when on Tuesday I could pull out these tools, next Wednesday I'm struggling again. And I'm really tired. The struggle's hard. I'm so tired that my machshava, my dibur, my maisa, my thought, my speech, my action, my behavior, mitzvahs that are hard for me to overcome, it doesn't end. It's really the cycle. I feel like I'm on a treadmill or a hamster wheel, right? I'm just the same thing again and again. And often, it's so interesting because psychologists talk about the patterns in our lives, and the dance is a pattern, right? Well, the Alter Rebbe didn't use the word patterns or dance, but the Alter Rebbe was saying, you're going to repeat the same issues are going to come up again and again. It's almost like Hashem constantly is giving us opportunities to refine this aspect of self. I was telling the student, I said, when something keeps recurring, it's the Eibishter's gift for you to take a look at. Just had this conversation last week with a student who grew so much as Yiddishkeit, but dug his heels in when it came to dressing for Shabbos. He simply doesn't need to, whatever. And suddenly a shidduch came up for him. And Yer Shamayim, learned, wonderful young man, but flip-flops and shorts on Shabbos, which I'm not saying I'm not judging, but and for a long time in his growth in Yiddishkeit, we said, even the water carrier and the shoemaker got dressed for Shabbos. The Tanaim, the Amoraim, everyone gets dressed for Shabbos. You show up at the Shabbos table like a prince. Okay, fine. There's a fine balance with people that their journey is their journey, and it's between him and the Eibishter. But recently, moved to a different city, and the shliach said to him, you're such a chassid. What are you dressing in flip-flops and shorts to show? So that shliach started bothering him. And meanwhile, I get a shidduch call for him. And the girl says, so how does he dress? I said, look, during the week, casual. She's in Shabbos, a kapata and a hat. Will he wear kapata and a hat? I said, flip-flops and shorts. So I get on the phone with him, and he says, oh, I really wanted that shidduch. It was so good for me. And I said, okay. I said, look, And he says, it's so funny because the rabbi just last week sat me down and said, all right, you need to grow up and put on Shabbos clothes. I said to him, listen, the old story we say that the man was sitting in the house and there's a flood and he hears on the radio he needs to leave. There's a flood. Well, maybe I shouldn't say flood joke for Houston. It's a little insensitive, but it's an old joke, right? Let's joke for the joke because we could always laugh at things, right? And they send the radio, and then the cops come by and say get out, and then the helicopter and the boat, right? I said, listen, the Abishter sent you Yossi, then he sent you Manya, then Masya Menucha and Levi were asking you about your Shabbos clothes. Now the new shliach, finally a girl. Okay, so now it's gonna click. And I said to him, I think it's the Abishter's way of saying this keeps coming up, so it's time to look into it. I said, start doing research on understanding minhag, understanding Big Day Shabbos. She said, I could put on a kapat and a hat. I said, no, what is it, Purim? You're going to put on a kapat and a hat? It's not a costume. It starts inside and then it goes outside. So it's an interesting thing to see how it's easy for me to see his patterns. In ourselves, it's a lot harder to see the patterns, right? Can I really look at my own patterns and own them a little bit more? But the Alter is going to challenge us in this area. He's going to say, you're going to have, as a Beinoni, things that are going to come up again and again and again. And if it's not with your husband, it's with your child. If it's not with your child, it's with the teacher. If it's not with the teacher, it's with your daughter-in-law, with your mother-in-law. It's going to come up again. If you're, let's say, someone who lets people take advantage of you, chances are it's not in one area of life. It's in all areas of life. And they actually teach you in the field of education when you're trying to understand whether something's really a developmental issue for a child. Is it the environment? Like, is it the teacher, the classroom, the parent, the home? Or is it the child is struggling with this developmental or behavioral stage? They tell you, take a look at the pattern. Where does it represent? If it's at home and at school and in the park and, across the spectrum of this child's life, then it's a developmental and educational thing that must be worked on. If it's just in the classroom, then it's the classroom that needs the work. So the teacher needs to take a look at what she's doing, right? So as parents also, by the way, when you hear, sometimes you have this kid who's like, masach meshuget, and they drive you crazy, right? And then you hear they went to someone's house, they're a complete tzaddik, and they helped, and you're like, my kid. So first of all, you play it cool. Oh, thank you for the call. Wow, yeah. And then you're like, wait, which kid did I drop off, right? You're like, there's no way, right? So here, what you're saying is that environment at home, the child is acting like a child. They feel safe, so they could be obnoxious. Baruch Hashem, I always say, when I get such phone calls from either a teacher at school, I say, my kid was a host somewhere, I say, Baruch Hashem, at least I know they have the raw ingredients in there. They know what's expected. The funny thing is, I remember we once pulled up at an airport to go trip the whole family. I remember where it was. And I remember as we pulled up at the airport, my husband was to drop us off and then park the car. One child says to the front, okay, guys, we're at the airport. It's time to act normal. We have to act normal now, right? I told my husband, I looked at him, he says, did you hear that? I said, Baruch Hashem, at least they know what it means to act normal, right? At least that's a level. But I think we can understand this, right? We have our best self, our weakest self, and how does it play out in life, and what patterns are we repeating? And then we're going to discuss another layer, because looking at the patterns, really, we could get overwhelmed and exhausted. And am I really still, 40 and dealing with this thing again? Still? Like, really? I haven't mastered this? I'm still, 40, 50, 60, 20, 30, whatever it is. I'm still in the same cycle. I still haven't overcome this. This mitzvah is still hard for me. It's still hard for me to remember to daven or whatever. Everyone has their own stuff. I'm giving examples that, everyone can relate to some degree. So we could feel like, how much energy am I going to put into this? Refining this midah, or this character trait, or this relationship, or myself, or this mitzvah, or this minhag. How much am I going to struggle with this? Like, Ibshar, come on. Or I could say, why can't I just perfect this? The question is perfection a goal? And really, it's not. I think we have to get this notion of the perfect daughter, mother, wife, sister, friend. Perfect does not exist in human beings. I remember once one of my children wasn't so thrilled with our parenting. Ever. It was a conversation. No one understands me. If you ever had a preteen or a teen, and no one gets me, no one understands me, no one, my parents, whatever. It was a wonderful gripe session. And I, as I mentioned before, I like to try to, just like the author talks about visiting an idea later, I like to visit the idea later, because in the moment, the kid defense is down. No one wants to hear it. An argument, logic doesn't flow. So I revisited with the child and I said, I know you're frustrated with whatever's going on, but you do realize that Hashem gave the job of raising you to imperfect people, right? Child looked at me and I said, we're just humans. We're not malachim. We don't have all the answers. We're working, but Hashem actually chose us to raise you. So he really figured we're the best ones for the job. Are we going to make mistakes? Oh yeah, that's what therapists are for later on in life, right? But at the end of the day, we're doing the best we can. And Hashem chose us for you and you for us. So he felt we were the best ones. If he wanted perfection, and I think I may have even said this in an earlier class, he would have chosen malachim for the job. Right? And I think so this notion of perfection as women, I think we get so many messages of what it is to be the perfect wife and the perfect shalom bayis and the perfect yom tov and the perfect Shabbos, perfect mother, the perfect daughter-in-law, perfect. I don't even aim for perfection. It's not even a goal because it's a goal I can't accomplish, and it's a goal I will surely, most likely, be very disappointed in a lot of areas of myself. And you know what? Like we said before, shame and guilt is not going to help me project forward into life and accomplish more. So we have to really challenge our own self-imposed notion of perfection. And the Alter Rebbe said it earlier, when you're struggling, remember you're serving Hashem in that struggle. Celebrate that, right? So how could we do this? By creating a shift. Again, a shift. And I know I keep saying the word shift, but you could say whatever you want to say, the word pivot, shift, whatever it is. But I think that to me, that's the best way to look at it, but really looking at it differently. And the Alter Rebbe says, until now, the Alter Rebbe has been discussing, at the end of the day, right? We started with the Nefesh Bahamas, the inside is Nefesh Bahamas, Nefesh Elokis, and it's the garments of how I express those souls are Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa, thought, speech, and action. And until now, we're really focusing on trying to create an alignment between our outsides and our insides. And all those tools were to help align us, right? The tool of Mayachshal Talalev and the tool of, the long, Der Haruch Ktsara, the long way, the short way, mind over heart, tapping into the Ava Misuteres, the love that's hidden within us, tapping into spiritual adrenaline, our love for Hashem, and our understanding of the power of a mitzvah. Until now, all these are great tools to help with that alignment. But now the author is going to address when we have this false sense of perfection, and when the cycle and the pattern keeps coming up, and it's daunting, and it's overwhelming, and it's draining, and it's how much longer am I going to struggle with this, right? And it could even feel, I don't know if I'll ever master, let's go with Mida, my laziness, my stubbornness, my anger, I don't know. Will I ever really overcome any of those midas? I don't know. So why even try? It's like giving a child a job where you're setting them up for failure. So in a way, it seems like, Abishur, you're setting us up for failure. I didn't choose to be born with a stubborn streak or a lazy streak or a passive streak. Okay, that passive, lazy are both not my qualities, so I chose the ones. I wasn't born to be, maybe a little stubborn sometimes. I wasn't born with those traits. I didn't choose them. What do you want? And they even tell you when it comes to your children, comes to even our spouses, those we love, not to set the person up for failure. We set people up for failure sometimes. We know a child is going to miss their nap or stay up late, they're going to have a tantrum. We know if a kid doesn't come home and eat right away or whatever, they're going to be upset. We know, let's say a spouse walks in and the house is, I don't know, let's go with music blaring and kids swinging from the chandelier, they're not going to be in a aligned place. I'm giving very extreme examples because if my kids are swinging from a chandelier and the music was blaring, my husband, I would look at him right away and say, honey, you got the next 5 hours, bye. Right? But my point is that there's certain things, and I hate using this word because it's so overused in 2021, that trigger us, right? There's certain things that we have certain reactions to. And we know we could set a person up for failure, ourselves up for failure. If we know we need 8 hours in order to function as a sane, calm human being, then sleeping 6 hours, I'm setting myself up for failure. So ultimately, how it can feel like the Abishur set us up for failure. Because will I ever get there? And a destination, when you can't get there, it's like, why even start the journey? Why even try? It could really weigh us down. But the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that here's another way to look at it. It's not about internal and external alignment imperfection. It's not about that. We can't perfect ourselves, but imperfect beings can perfect the world. That, in my imperfection, I can be perfecting the world. That's just like such a tremendous idea that when I thought about it, I'm like, that's just like that. This is the gift of Chassidus. This is the gift of being a Chabad Chassid. In my imperfections, there's space to really create a dear Le'yisbarach, a space where Hashem can feel comfortable. Me, the human being who's struggling to function as a, productive, polite, meaningful member of society. Yep. And this is the gift that Alter Rebbe is going to give us. And we have to look now at how. Because until now, we've been focusing on trying to create that alignment. But now the Alter Rebbe is going to kind of shift a little bit and say, okay, there is a little bit of a misconception we have. And this has to do with our actions and our kavanah, our intention. And it can feel like the actions and the kavanah, our intention and our behavior, should always be aligned. Always like this, beautiful. I want to be giving and therefore I'll be giving. I want to be calm, therefore I'll be calm. My actions, my behavior is matched by deep intent. And I saw this analogy that I think Shais Tab once gave, and it really resonated with me. He says, you stumble into the kitchen. It's early in the morning. You need your cup of coffee. Your head is bleary, and you go to the coffee machine. And there's no coffee beans, and you press the button, and your eyes, you can't even, some people can't, their eyes can't even be open before coffee. No coffee. And your husband comes in, oh, honey, you need coffee. Coffee. It's so good. I know coffee's amazing for you. And he starts telling you about, remember when we were in Italy together in that little cafe and how delicious it was? And what about that coffee bean? Oh, you like that one, right? Yeah, I started having a conversation about coffee. At the end of the day, in comes your child, and they ran around the corner to the coffee shop. Halavai, we all have kosher coffee shops at our corner store. Rabbi Taub, I think, was telling the story from Grand Heights, maybe, I don't know. In comes the coffee, and your daughter hands you the coffee. Now you could even listen to what your husband's saying about the coffee in Italy and the coffee being in the air, right? And the coffee machine that you should buy next. You couldn't even hear, you couldn't even process, you couldn't even think. You need the coffee. Now I have the coffee, now I can function. Now I could listen, now I could be present. So this is an analogy which I really love. And I tried to think of a different analogy, but I think it's really, really a powerful one. At the end of the day, what did you need? You needed the coffee. You don't need philosophy about coffee. You don't need emotions about coffee. You need the action. And so the Alter Rebbe is going to say, when you can't get there because you're in your pattern, in your rut, struggling, whatever it is, action is the bottom line. And how often have we heard, Hamaisa hua ikar, bottom line is action. Or just do it, right? I would say Nike stole a slogan from Yidden. Just do it. You don't feel it? Just do it. Imagine we waited till we felt an alignment every night before making supper or before doing laundry or taking errands. I don't know about you, but it wouldn't happen that often. There'd be a lot of hungry people. There was as a story, I think, from the Alter Rebbe that I may have told you this in a different class, and I think I may have, but I'm going to tell it to you briefly because if you weren't in the other class, it's a great story where there was Alter Rebbe was staying at a inn of a very rich gvir, and the rich man came to Alter Rebbe and said, confession, like I have a lot of ego. I love giving stuff, and I love how I feel when I get stuff. And Alter Rebbe, he says, I'm thinking of cutting back because it feeds me too much. And Alter Rebbe says, to the man who has food in his stomach, doesn't care what your intentions are. Keep giving tzedakah. At the end of the day, action is the bottom line. And so while emotion and intention is so important, right? They're both important. They're both significant. And they're both transformative because it's really not enough to just think and feel like helping people or think and feel about doing a mitzvah. I feel like I should do the mitzvah. I think I should do the mitzvah. Just do the mitzvah. right? The student that says, I love God, I have a relationship with God, but it's all in my heart. I'm very connected spiritually, emotionally. I'm like, hello, don't keep it all in your heart. It's way too much for your heart. Express it a little, do a mitzvah, right? And so I think that for us, there's so many tools that we need to handle the hurdles in life. The upward seems sometimes like an upward climb to overcome, but the struggle should never be with despair. We should always, yes, we must have kavanah. We must have mindset's wonderful. And later the will address fully why kavanah is so powerful. Intentionality is so powerful. And I'm sure each and every one of us can understand how when you've been a recipient of a favor with the right kavanah or the wrong kavanah. Someone did it for you because they were doing a big favor for you, or someone did it for you because they really wanted to. It's always nice to receive a favor when someone really wanted to do it for you. And it's yucky to do something. And by the way, to even do something for someone when you feel resentful or don't feel like doing it, right? But ultimately, we shouldn't wait till all our feelings catch up. I don't feel like whatever now. Your feelings should not always be the thing that determines. Your intellect should not always, because bottom line is action. And the Alter Rebbe gives us this clarity in order to enable us to say, okay, I am struggling with this. I am struggling with my laziness. So does it mean I just wallow and figure and sit and talk about my laziness, or I just get up and do what I need to do? And I think this is such a real example for all of our relationships in life, right? Because we could think it's, when I get there and when I feel it and when I'm connected. Yes, that's wonderful, but I still got to do it until I get there, until I feel it. Whether you call it fake it till you make it, whether you call it, that the action will actually affect us in a way that transforms us. And it's so interesting because in the latest research on neuroscience and psychology, behavioral psychology, so often they're talking about how is it that we overcome or we change our behavior by doing it. Rewiring the neural pathways and just doing it. This is such age-old wisdom of Torah, enlightened by Chassidus, or the light, clarified through Chassidus, that, okay, so psychologists and neuroscientists now could give us the language to understand behind how it works. That your brain, the neural pathways, are just your strength in communication between that area and that area, you just do it. But sometimes we do it first, and then we can catch up. Our feelings could catch up. It's like someone telling you Shabbos, you should keep Shabbos. Shabbos is beautiful. Shabbos is inspiring. Shabbos is wonderful. And it is. But there's nothing like doing Shabbos, like experiencing Shabbos. And I can't tell you, for students that I see, just experiencing a Shabbos changes them, because they never had this idea of letting go, and this idea of connecting, and this idea of bonding, and this idea of spending time in their own skin, without the constant noise and distractions and coming and going. I could describe it from today till tomorrow. I could describe to you what it's like to come to College Station, but unless you spend Shabbos here, I could write in wax and wane poetically about Shabbat, Chabad, and the experience. And I tell students, and I tell families that are looking, I say, you just come. You'll feel the energy, you'll see the experience, because action is tremendous. So the Alter Rebbe is going to give us that gift of saying, even if you can't catch up, even if you don't feel it, just try it. Just do it. And when we just do it, or fake it till make it, then what ends up happening is we get there. Because mitzvahs are Hashem's will and Hashem's wisdom. So the more we connect with Hashem, the more we do what He wants for us, the more we're nourishing and nurturing ourselves in a very, very deep way. Remember, we said a mitzvah is not a command, and it is a command. It's not only a command, it's not a good deed. It's a tzavta v'chibor. It's a connection. It's a bond. My neshama, my essence, my whole self with who I am and why I'm here. That's pretty big stuff. And at the end of the day, it's not about, in other religions, there's a lot of like transformation through meditation, through a spiritual experience, through all these things. And we're like, the Rebbe's like, no, go put on tefillin, hang up a mezuzah, go to a mikvah. Like all the Rebbe's miftzayim were all so focused on action. Why? Because if I'm just waiting for my own spiritual enlightenment or my own emotional alignment, it's very subjective. Today I feel it, tomorrow I don't. Today I was on the top of a mountain and I had a spiritual experience. The next day I was in a busy Manhattan city, getting cut off or losing money from someone on Wall Street. Now I'm not feeling spiritually aligned, connected, motivated, whatever. That's all subjective. It's based on my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions. Action of what Hashem wants from us, based on Hashem. Based on what Hashem feels we're capable of, what we can do. And it's so interesting because I just got a phone call from a shlucha. She called me Matzah Shabbos. It was like a very thoughtful call. She said she was just talking in a community, and a Sheikh Chabad community event. And she said she was sitting there, and a girl came over to her, something about campus shluchos, and she said to the girl said to her, do you know Manya? She said, yeah. She said, I want to tell you something that she said to me that I think would really click with what you just said. I don't remember as she told me this, I'm like, oh, it sounds nice. I'm glad I said it 5-6 years ago at a Shabbaton. Apparently someone asked at the Shabbaton about growing in Yiddishkeit and doing things and not doing things. She was in the audience and she was shy, introspect, whatever, struggling. And she was dating a non-Jewish person for a long time. She had this problem. She was really pulled towards Yiddishkeit, towards living a frum life. On the other hand, her non-Jewish boyfriend's a wonderful person, right? So she's torn. There's her emotions and her intellect and her spirituality. She doesn't know what to do. She's torn. And I answered this other person about growing as a Jew. I said, look, don't resist it. You're worried. You feel a pull towards Shabbos, towards kosher. It's not because it's something new for you. It's actually in your neshama. That's actually intuitive for you. We as Yidden with a neshama, it's intuitive for us to do Torah mitzvahs. It's the most natural state for a Yid. So I said to this girl, I said, don't resist, don't fight it. You're not trying on something new. It's not a costume. It's not a fake. It's you. It's actually more you than the other you. And she said, I was sitting in the audience. My shlucha told me a bunch of times about growing as a Yid and not be the non-Jewish boyfriend. She said, when I heard that, it clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the real me. And standing before this young shlucha was a girl in a shaitel. I don't even know her name. What's my point? My point is that when we remember the real us is the us that wants to do what we need to do. Wants to partner with the Eibishter, wants to bring light into the world. And we all have different intellectual capacities. So if we wait till our intellect to catch up, forget it. We all have different emotional capacities and states. I think as women, our emotional rainbow or capacities wane and wax and up and down between hormones and life and whatever, premenopausal, postmenopausal, pre-baby, post-baby. We're a basket case from Alazite, and if we're waiting for our emotions to catch up, forget it, right? We've way too many emotional roller coasters to go through things, even just biologically, the hormones that take us on a trip. But Torah mitzvahs, when we follow what Hashem wants, it's subjective, and it's clear, and it's focused, and it's about how we can not do what we imagine. If we only engage in a relationship with our spouse or our child or people we love, a friend, by what we think we want to do for them. What is it about what they want? It's a relationship. Hashem told us what he wants. Shabbos, kosher, taras mishpacha, mitzvahs, kasher, tznius, lemataira. He told us very clearly, 613 ways what he wants of us, what he expects of us. So when we realize that within this relationship with us and Hashem, it's really, we want to do what Hashem wants for us, of us, and why we're here. That's so powerful. And the Alter goes on to say that a neshama could come all the way into this world, struggle for years, the ups, the downs, right? And yet what? Decades of labor, waging war throughout their lives against their nature. The Alter is acknowledging it's a long haul with a lot of struggle. But the Alter is going to say, but wait, yes, you're right. It's a long haul with a lot of struggle. And action is the bottom line. And this is why your neshama went all the way from heaven, from a very godly spiritual space, to this Yerida Zula Tzarech Aliyah, down into this world in order to elevate its existence, which is forever. And so then the Alter is going to spend quite a few chapters now discussing the power of action. Because I have to tell you, when I was younger and I was a teenager and I heard, just do it, fake it till you make it, I didn't like it. I don't want to be a faker. I want to feel it. I want to understand it. I want to connect. It really didn't click. You mean I should just do Yiddishkeit as a checklist of to-dos and not to-dos? Didn't work for me. But had I learned these next few parakim of Tanya about the power of actions, the power of mitzvahs, the understanding of the struggle, I would see it differently. So this is what we need to learn for ourselves so we can share with those we love who are struggling with day to day, right? So the author is going to give the mashal from Zayar. And Zayar talks about how the Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, which means the God, the light of Hashem is the soul of man. But the author is going to take it a step further. The author is going to say, okay, yes, it's true. It's going to compare, again from Zayar, this mashal of a candle. And what is it when we look at a candle? And candles are fascinating. I always tell students, I say, why are Jews so obsessed with candles? Someone passes away, we light a candle. Shabbos, we light a candle. Always candles. Yom Kippur, we have 5 candles. What's with us and candles? Like, we're not pyromaniacs. There's something more going on here, right? And it's something interesting for them to say, oh, I never thought of that. I even tell them, I say, even this concept of a candlelit vigil, where do you think that comes from? Lighting a candle to commemorate someone's life. This comes from Zayar. It comes from, obviously, it trickles down into Torah in many ways. At halacha and minhag in many ways, but at the end of the day, this concept of flame representing the neshama, representing Hashem, right? And we know, I usually do this in Hebrew school, I pull out 5 different candles, different shapes, they look different, they smell different, they are different. I didn't do this, ladies, I'm sorry, I didn't pull a hands-on thing, but usually I'll pull out different candles, and I'll say, let's look at these. They look the same? No, they look different. Blue wax, yellow wax, red wax, white, big, tall, small, like us, all different, big, tall, small, yellow, blue, whatever, right? Look at the flame. The flame is all the same. The flame wants to connect. The flame always moves upward. The flame is never stagnant. The flame, take a candle, flip it right, left, up, down, all around. It's the same. It's always upward. It's always moving. But a flame alone is dangerous. Right? We don't want to try that at home. Just leave a flame hanging out on the table. What does a flame need? Flame needs a wick to anchor it. And a flame needs fuel to help it burn so it can bring light. The neshama alone, okay, a neshama is wonderful, beautiful, but a neshama needs a guf. A neshama needs to be anchored in this world. That's that anchor. That wick is the body. It holds the neshama in its place, which is, we know, unfortunately, when someone is, after 180 years, their body is worn out, to 120, 180, their body's worn out. That's when the neshama is able to join the other flames, because the wick is not holding it, anchoring it down in this world anymore. And the flame is the neshama. But what is the oil? The oil is fuel. That's Torah mitzvahs. It's mitzvahs. But if I don't light the flame, if there's no burn, if I don't do the action is the burning. So yes, when we want to bring light into the world, it's through action. It's not just a neshama free floating on its own. That's not going to bring spirituality into the world, light into the world, bring Hashem's presence into this world. What needs to be is the action. And you know what's so interesting? What's the sign of action? How many calories did I burn today on that walk? When we're moving, doing, we burn calories. And how incredible. The author was telling us, wait, this is our body, our guf, our neshama, our actions, our fuel is what brings light into the world, the Eibishter into the world. And you know what's so fascinating? The author goes on to explain that a neshama alone, a neshama a neshama is one with the Eibishter. It's part of the Eibishter. Our guf, so it can't be nullified. A neshama, it can't be nullified to, it's one with Hashem. It's from Hashem. Our actions can be nullified. Our guf could be nullified. And so when we work hard to overcome, to do the mitzvah, whether we're feeling it or not, whether I'm intellectually or emotionally, I'm aligned when I do it, that's when transformation happens for myself, and even more so for the world. Do you remember how we said an imperfect person brings perfection in the world? This is how. By what? The mitzvahs that we do. The bodily energy I use to bring light into the world. The energy every single one of you use to show up in class tonight, to connect to Torah, to learn more, to grow. There's energy. You have to get the kids to bed. You have to get things settled. You have to turn on your technology. You're using energy to do. Energy to go do a mitzvah, to cook, to bake, to do. I always see on the Neshei WhatsApp, this one had a baby, and this one had a procedure, and this one eats food. All that energy we use, we're literally transforming our guf to be one with Hashem, to be a conduit. It's a perfect union. So mitzvahs are a perfect union between our guf and Hashem. And that's really comforting for the Beinani. You know why? Because the Beinani is really struggling, right? The Beinani really, it's overwhelming, it's tiring, it's exhausting. But the Beinani needs to know that if I can just do it, I'm serving Hashem. I'm literally a conduit for light in this world. I am able to bring light into the world. And remember in class 1 and 2, we talked about Klipas Nega, and we talked about Kedusha, we talked about holiness, and we talked about things that are Shalish Klipas Atmeas, non-holiness, and then we talked about neutral, things that are in between, and it's our actions that will transform them. This is where it comes in, that when we do, we are literally in Parak Lamed Vav Alter was talking about literally liyais l'dira l'yisparach. We are creating a dira b'tachtainim in this world for Hashem, creating a home for Hashem. And I think even though I had so much more I wanted to cover, we're hitting an hour, and I'm going to stop here so at least we could work through processing. I have like 4 more pages of notes of things that I want to cover. Goodness gracious, I'm very ambitious when it comes to this, but there's so much to discuss and do. We may have to do 9 weeks. I don't know who's going to be up for that, but we may have to add a week just so we get through the concepts. We'll figure it out. It will be a bonus week. Well, that's what we'll call it, bonus week. We'll add it on so we can get through all the beautiful ideas that we really need to get. Okay, I see that someone said they're up for 9 weeks. Okay, so we'll take a vote and we'll see. We may have to add a week just because I had so much more to cover today. Yeah, now you know why, ladies. I said when I did this with my women, my students' mothers, it took us 16 weeks. But we also had 16 weeks available on the calendar. Anyway, so we're going to stop here. And I really want to, because there's so many big ideas. And the question I was asked in the beginning of class, we're not going to get to because it's part of kind of the next concept. But I want to stop here and go through Yehudit. If you don't mind, please, in the beginning of next class, ask me that question. I will write it down in Ritz Hashem after class, but I want to make sure we do get to it. But I want to wrap here because there's so much that I think that sometimes we struggle with when it comes to doing and not feeling. We could feel like a faker, right? We could feel like it's not the real me, right? There's like, a story of a chassid who, wore, let's say go with the equivalence of jeans and a t-shirt. And I think he went into the Rebbe Rashab and, and he says, enough, I'm stopping a faker every time. By the Rebbe, I wear a kapata and a hat, and here I'm wearing my jeans and t-shirt. What are my jeans and t-shirt? I'm going to be the real me. And I think it was the Rebbe Rashab. I hate to misquote, as I do when I tell stories, so I apologize. How about one of the Rebbeim? And the Rebbe said, I think there's Rebbe Rashab or Marash, and he said to him, until now I thought the real you was the kapata and the work you was the jeans and t-shirt. Now who's the real us? And I think that sometimes we could feel like, I don't know, that's not really me. I'm not up to that level, or I'm not there, or that mitzvah's too hard. And I think that what we're learning here is that when we're specifically struggling, we just got to do it. Even if we're not feeling like being loving, kind, and patient. Maybe we're very right for being angry at our spouse right now and being, toxic or whatever. Toxic's never good, but angry, resentful, frustrated. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever our emotional realities are. Or maybe this child is, really needing to hear it from me, And I think that sometimes we have to remind ourselves that even if my intellect and my emotions have not gotten there, I could still do it. Because that's actually natural for me. Because my neshama, that's the most natural state for me as a yid. So you feel like, oh, well, if I daven today, I can't daven every day. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to say chitas every day. So I might as well not. No, come on, do it. So any thoughts, any ideas, anyone want to share anything that they want to jump in on? Because I know that we discussed a lot here today. And I didn't realize the recap would take so long, but I still don't regret doing it because I think it was an important recap. Anyone want to unmute and jump in and share any thoughts?
Hi, Manya, it's Judith.
Hi.
Hi. So I was just sort of at a Farbrengen today, and we were talking about when is it, or is it okay to say, Elisa, you can maybe help me. Is it okay to maybe say, Itza, you too, like to say today, I'm okay by just being, meaning I'm exhausted or I don't know what, and I can't.
What do you mean?
No, so you were saying just do
Can you
it.
explain a little bit more?
No, like today I'm just gonna concentrate, or like today, I don't know if it's more of a mental state of mind or an emotional state of mind, but I'm gonna go with, mental health type of thing, where it's
Right.
like I just can't cope right now to X, Y, or Z. And right now I just need to pause or whatever.
Okay. So here's where
I think that just to clarify, I think the way I heard the question asked today, Yehudit, and
Yeah.
I could have heard it differently, was we know and we learn that we're supposed to always be in a growth mindset, like
Yes.
always striving to grow, be better, do more. Is there a place for days where we say, you know what, I think I'm doing a pretty good job today just being where I am, not necessarily the growth mindset?
Okay, amazing. I think this overachieving growth mindset is actually literally the perfectionism that Alter was challenging before. I really think so. I think we have so many messages that society sends us of who we need to be, at what stage, at what point, at what time. I think we need to reclaim that it's what Hashem wants of us. And really filter through what is it. Like, I can't be like, I'm so tired, so I'm just gonna eat lobster and McDonald's instead of cooking a kosher meal. But I'm okay giving the kids cereal and milk. There's a very vast difference. And I think always being in this growth mindset is exhausting. And I think we're talking about that too today. Like, whoa, sometimes I'm not growing. Sometimes I'm literally just coasting, but I'm trying to do the best I can. And I think as women, we really struggle with being. And in essence, really, that's malchus, that's the feminine energy, that's the energy of Shabbos, and the whole world has gotten to us, where we don't ever feel like we're enough. Well, you need to grow, I need to be a better mother, better wife, better sister, better friend, better, whoa, stop, be. And really, Shabbos is meant to teach us that. Actually, I think, I don't know, for me, Corona talk was a really good life experience in that. And for me, actually carrying the triplets was a massive bop over the head, wake up call about defining myself by doing versus being. Because for so many months, all I was able to do was to be in a bed. And my sole job was incubating these 3 humans to bring 3 neshamas into the world. And it was a very humbling experience because people are like, oh, that's great, bed rest, enjoy. I'm like, do you know me? Bed rest is like Gehenna for me. Like I need to do, I need to be, I need to accomplish. And I think that when it comes to our mental health, I think what we should try to see is what of Torah mitzvahs can nourish me in a real way. You know, my friend, and I don't know if I shared this with you ladies, and I'm going to read it directly. We had a whole conversation about a women's chiyuv in davening in tefillah. And I think that this it really resonated with me, that I actually copied it down. Once was a Farbrengen I was at, and the shlucha, a good friend of mine, she said, and I'm gonna put this in the chat because I think it's worth visually seeing. Do you daven how much? You're a mother, you're busy, you have so many other rights, responsibilities. And my friend said something that really, really clicked with me. First thing she said, I don't know, if all I have to do for everyone else, the least I do is deserve time to thank Hashem. I was like, whoa, she really sees davening differently. And then this chat, she said this, and I'm putting it out there. In all this discussion about davening, someone threw out a question that definitely made me stop and think. Why, when someone talks about a mother making time to daven, do people protest? You're not at the right stage in life. maybe when the kids are older, whatever, if the same person would mention the importance of self-care, people wouldn't protest. They'd say 100%, you must work on self-care. Could it be we think davening is for Hashem's sake and Hashem knows we already have enough obligations? But what if davening and connecting daily to our source to strengthen our connection to our Creator was really the ultimate self-care? Why would we push it off for 20 years? And then she wrote, no need to respond, just something to think of. And I literally cut and pasted. It was probably 2-3 years ago. I have it on my Google Notes, because I think that we have to really check in with ourselves. Is this like growing and doing this growth mindset really productive or healthy, or is it imposed by others? Is imposed by social media, by what I see how other people are accomplishing? And I remember in the beginning of quarantine, this one's going on hikes and this one's learning how to knit, and I'm like, we didn't fight and we ate today. Like, we did well. Like, no one got disowned. I feel like that was a great quarantine day number 70,000. I don't know what it was, like what it felt like, right? So I think sometimes we're comparing ourselves to others, and that's, we know, unhealthy. Sometimes it's because we have this narrative or story in our head of what I need to be, which is this notion of perfection, which is not healthy. And I think that the Alter Rebbe's approach is giving us a much more paced and healthy way of looking at it. So you know what? If I don't feel like supper, guess what? Cereal milk is just fine, and I don't even feel bad about it. Like, enjoy. You'll have a nutritious meal. You've had plenty of nutritious meals before. You'll have many later. Enjoy the ice cream for supper. You know what I'm saying? So I think when we talk about growth mindset, I think we've become so obsessed with the growth mindset that it almost is like it's controlling us. Should we grow? Of course. Everything that's living must grow. And like, what's so interesting? The Rebbe, it's a video you could watch. I think it's in the video of Challenge in the beginning. The Rebbe was David T. Chase, very famous banker in Manhattan, came to the Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe something that he says, I remember, the Rebbe, you told me that a human being is like an engine. If you overdo it, it burns out. And if you underdo it, it gets sluggish and rusts. So balance. And this is where a mashpia comes in. This is where a good friend comes in. This is sometimes where a good therapist comes in. Because I think as women, we're so used to hearing who we should be and what we should be accomplishing, we don't know how to live in our own skin. And really, maybe it's for another class, another time, beautiful Maimer, Lahavin Inyan Rosh Chodesh, that's all about the moon and the sun, okay? And why Rosh Chodesh is a feminine holiday. It's a beautiful Maimer. It's in the Maimerim in English, the series. Highly recommended, and maybe we can learn it together next round of learning. I don't know what our plans are from here. Really teaches us about the essence of being. And that's feminine, that's Shabbos. And we need to like realign and shut out the buzz, shut out the noise, and learn how to be who we are. Not by compromising our standards or Torah mitzvahs, because that nourishes us. It's a harf. If it's holding us back from being our potential, it's different. But checking with the narrative, because sometimes it sounds very noble, and really it's not. It's holding us back. So I know there was a little bit of a long podcast over there, a little long, TED talk there for your answer, but I hope within it is something to think about. Any other questions or thoughts based on what we discussed today?
Manya, as I heard you explaining it, all I kept on going to was back to that concept of guilt. Like, it really all comes from that guilt. And the kids are perfect at pinning it and giving you that guilt.
I want to tell you something. I have one child that's a little better at finding the guilt and manipulation. And I actually started calling the child out. I said, you're trying to make me feel like a bad mommy, and I'm not a bad mommy. I'm a very good mommy, and I love you very much, and I take care of the things you need. And just because you're not getting what you need does not mean you should try to make me feel like a bad mommy. I may be wrong. Maybe there's a child psychologist on here who will disagree. But I actually think the child should realize what they're doing. I'm okay with that. I love you. I take care of you. Why are you saying this? It's not true. Just because you're saying it doesn't mean it's true. So we have to own ourselves, because they're picking on our weakness. They're picking on our insecurities, and they're finding our buttons, and they know which ones to press incessantly. They know. But that's really where they're, remember we said before, when someone's acting out, it's a red flag. That's where our flag is, saying, neon sign saying, this is where your avodah is. This is where you could work. Because really, I don't think I'm the best mother, but I don't think I'm a terrible mother. And it's not good to think you're a terrible mother. It's just not going to help us be a better mother. okay, I'm a mother, that's a human being. I have challenges I have to overcome. I have to be better. But I have certain children. I said, I think it's a little manipulative. And I explained to the child what manipulative is. So I'm a big fan of stating the obvious. Again, I don't know the outcome. We'll keep you posted in a few years. My kids are going to sit up there and say, my mother was never ambiguous with us. She was always so straightforward. But I do believe that as long as it's coupled with a lot of love and a lot of attention, time, validation, et cetera, but I think it helps the child understand their actions too. I don't know. We could talk about it another time, whether I'm right or wrong, but